Abram.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Are we there? Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Let's check audio. Okay,
Can you hear
I'm
me?
seeing
I hear you.
I'm seeing sound from you. The computer has once again decided that it wants to go to the wrong place. Give me just a second. Output should be Roadcaster. Now I hear you.
Okay, cool.
Hello.
Hey, thank you for being patient. I'm sorry. It took me an extra few to put Isaac to bed.
No worries.
So, yes, what's going on?
There's an Abram. And there's an Abram. Okay. Everything's set up.
Great.
How are things?
All right, I guess. Um, I mean, I'm trying to think of what's useful. What's useful that we could talk about for today.
Okay.
The so things that happened this week. Let's see. Well, it was the Raspberry Pi 9th birthday, and I have a lot of information about that I wrote up. The stuff continued to happen with people continue to crypto mine, but I guess that wasn't that big a deal. Oh, it was also the I think 10th anniversary of Thunderbolt this week,
How was it?
and we interviewed Intel about it. But I don't know. I don't think of that as being that exciting. 9th anniversary of Raspberry Pi, 10th anniversary of Thunderbolt. Um, this past occurred this past week. Um,
Big
let's
week for
see.
anniversaries.
Yes, a big week for anniversaries. What else did we do this week that was particularly useful? Let's see. Well, I guess. I mean, we could talk about. We had a big. I don't know if this would be a great broad audience interest, but I interviewed the person who's in charge of Circuit Python this week. Gave me some breaking news about Circuit Python.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Also, we could talk about. Do I have the other one here? The best. Do we ever? I mean, we've talked kid stuff before, but I think I've figured out what the some of the best starter boards are for kids. Like I don't know, just based on what Isaac gets interested in, I think that the microbit might be the best board for kids.
Okay.
Does not do Circuit Python; it's more MicroPython. But just the amount of different stuff that it has in support. I don't know. Why don't we talk? Why don't we? I mean, the one I'm best qualified to talk about would be the Raspberry Pi birthday. Is that
Okay.
too much?
No, I don't think we've talked Raspberry Pi in a while on the show, actually. I think
Okay.
I think like you've actively gone out of your way to avoid it
I'm
because
trying,
we
I
did so
try. I
much
mean,
for a while.
I got all kinds of pieces here on my desk, but yeah, I mean, I have 9 things that you need to know on the ninth birthday, which is good for people who don't know stuff. So, did you ever send me that 64 by 64 thing, by the way?
Yes.
The logo? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll get to it. I'll get to it later rather than waste our time trying to set it up now. But next time I'll have a big honking LED display of LED display.
I stopped paying attention to the alien. So for those of you who are watching live, this is our pre-show planning. I stopped paying attention to the Alienware comments. They haven't stopped though.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
There's Alienware. What are people commenting?
You found a place here.
I found a niche.
People are talking back and forth about the quality of the screen, which was one of the big topics of the video. In fact, they're almost all the new stuff is almost exclusively talking about the screens.
Really?
Somebody asked a question.
That's good.
About screen refresh, and somebody gave additional information. It's
the first there was LG just announced the price of their OLED monitor, which is $4,000.
How much?
Isn't that crazy? $4,000.
That's what I thought you said.
Yes. Isn't that a little bit mad? Isn't that a little bit crazy? $4,000.
Yes. So they went off. There's like a whole big conversation about the Area 51M. That went on. You got conversation going, so good on you.
That's good. I mean, I know people like Alienware. Well, next time there's an Alienware, I'll be sure to bring it on the show.
Yeah, because it sounds like we found the market for that. Hopefully, it's translated into click-throughs to the site, once we include the review in there. Fingers crossed. Okay, so we're going to talk anniversary, and you saw the other topics?
Yes.
Excellent. Just got to make sure I don't run out of hard drive space. It's going to be tight. Let me get rid of this hard drive. Apparently holds exactly a year worth of backups.
Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. That'll be good for tonight. Okay. And then I've got record.
Oh, the other thing I've been doing this week, but I don't know. I think it might be a little too niche for our audience to get too into is been testing a new version of a keyboard I've tested before that is now hot swappable. So Isaac and I have been doing some hot swapping of switches.
Oh. Which one is that?
So the keyboard that I've been using, this is the Hex Gears Impulse, which I think I might have brought on the show previously back in the day when I reviewed the earlier version of it. It hasn't really changed at all, except that it's now hot swappable. So they sent me the new version that's hot swappable.
Okay.
So I don't think that's that interesting to folks. It's interesting to me because I moved from white to jade switches to try them.
Got it. All right. I think we're good to go. So let's do this. This week, big tech is in the crosshairs. Fall Guys is entering the Metaverse, and Sony is out of video sales. It's Sunday, March 7th, 2021, and this is episode 589 of F5 Live, Refreshing Technology. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat, through a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify TuneIn, or a myriad of other options, through our live stream platforms, livestream.com, Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook, or on our website, plugitslive.com. Thank you for making us a part of your day. There's two ways that you can do that. The first is Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can go to f5live.tv/join us, and there you can chat with us in the studio. Give us your feedbacks on the topics as we talk about them. If you can't join us live, that's okay. You can always go to plughitslive.com/subscribe, and there you'll see all of our shows, including F5 Live, The Pilch Point, Plug Hits Live Presents, and a whole lot more, and find all of the ways to watch, listen, and follow along. Hey, Vroom. It's been 2 weeks. So, how are you doing? I think you're
all right.
good.
Pretty good.
There we go.
Pretty good. Getting into a lot of projects with my son. So just a lot of different boards and things that we're getting into. And then this weekend was kind of keyboard weekend a little bit, because I got in a new hot swappable keyboard to test, and it was really interesting to me. Hot swappable, for those who don't know, means that you can take the key switches underneath and pull them out without desoldering, without doing a lot of difficult work, and pop in new switches. So I bought a new set of key switches that I'd always wanted to try, box jade switches, and he helped me put them in. And it's hard to say whether I like these better or worse. They seem to be a little bit than the previous switches, because they seem a little bit harder to press, which I thought I would like, but I'm finding myself making more typos because it's not red. They feel heavier.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I might go back, but the point was to just test the ability to swap switches on this keyboard. In general, which the keyboard is not at fault for if I pick switches that I didn't like as much as I might have. Right. It's once again, I will say real quick, without getting to, because we talked about this keyboard a bit 2 years ago or so, that the Hex Gears Impulse keyboard, which now has been revised to be hot swappable, is really one of the best bargains in tech at $89. You're getting a really fantastic mechanical keyboard, even if you don't swap the switches. If you buy it with the white switches, which I love, you're getting a really good quality RGB keyboard for mechanical keyboard for that price. We spent a lot of time on that. We took my other keyboard while I was testing this one and pulled all the key caps off and cleaned it, and that was some work. And a lot of stuff with that we were doing with with the boards around the different boards. So he loves his microbit board, which which he plays with all the time. And then we took this today. We took this Raspberry Pi Pico, and we programmed the different buttons on it to do different things on the computer, like crop something in Photoshop, or in his case, launch his school website. If you hit one of the buttons, it's just like it launches the website. Nice. We had to program that in CircuitPython. It's we're just getting a variety of different stuff done, I guess.
So kind of like having a homebrew Stream Deck.
Yeah, exactly. You could do that with this.
That's awesome.
In fact, I I saw something over the weekend where somebody actually created, I think, a Raspberry Pi powered Stream Deck software that like is specifically designed to just to be a Stream Deck. But this right here um, is the Pimoroni RGB keypad, and it has 16 keys on it. And if you plug a $4 Pico into it, you can program it. But originally, they still haven't provided an official library for making the keys actually act like a keyboard, like
Okay.
keyboard keys. But I found a script someone had written in CircuitPython which does it. So that's what we were playing with. Now this is the one that has the cheap rubbery keys. They're coming out with the new Keybow, which has mechanical keys and is going to cost like twice as much. But so it depends how much you like the key key feel. We've had this for a few weeks, but previously, while not being able to use it as a keyboard, Isaac programmed it to do like a light up game. So my 2-year-old could like hit the buttons on it and it would light up different colors for her because it's
awesome.
RGB also. So so it's fun. It's cute. We're constantly doing stuff like that. My desk is a mess of half finished projects like that.
I can appreciate that. Mine often is as well. I will point out that I also saw something over the weekend about a Raspberry Pi Stream Deck software from your site.
Yes, we covered it, but yeah, I mean, it was not with. I don't think it was using this,
No.
but yeah, you can. I mean, I'm of the opinion that you can never have enough buttons to press. So if I can get more things that give me more buttons, I will always take that.
Well, if you are watching if you're watching our show, you can see I've
Oh, you have
got
the
one.
Elgato?
Yeah, I've got an actual Stream Deck here under the desk. It's how I do all of the during stream switching. It's all done from that little pad under the desk. But the software here has 15 buttons, and I have 6. So I I would be very very interested in going this direction. So I'm going to read all about your your article over here after the show while the show is rendering.
Cool.
Anyway, on my side, my big accomplishment this week is CES is done. 104 interviews all out in the wild. That's a long 3 days of interviews, but we talked to some interesting companies this year. Everything from software that helps local governments, talk to their citizens, to a portable magnet-powered blender. That is my favorite part of the way we do CES. We never know what we're going to be talking about. So all of that is available at plughitslive.com/CES. Or if you're subscribed to us on YouTube or Facebook, you've probably already seen them. If you're subscribed on the podcast to Plug Hits Live Presents, you've probably already seen them as well. But if not, go check them out. They are all there in audio and video form. But obviously, you want to see these things. In the entire week, there were only 2 people who came on audio only. So you definitely want to see these products. So that's the way to do it. With that, we've got a lot of news to talk about, so let's get down to it. This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for a new laptop, a tablet, maybe an Xbox, games, or a whole lot more, you can get them at the Microsoft Store. And remember that current students, faculty, parents, and active military can save up to 10% on almost everything. You can find information about that and all the deals that are currently running by going to f5live.tv/Microsoft. So, We know that there's been a lot of talk and distrust about big tech. Seems like the one thing that can be agreed upon in the country right now is that. Um, and everybody has their own reasons, but it seems like almost everybody agrees that, particularly Facebook, Twitter, um, sometimes Amazon, uh, have policies that are, or Google for YouTube, have policies that are not clear, that they don't necessarily apply them equally. And so we have seen calls from both sides of the aisle to investigate and or possibly even break up some of the big guys. Um, there was a lot of question about what the new administration was going to do. I think we all know where the last administration stood on big tech, because they were very loud about it. There was question about what was going to happen under the new administration. Um, you know, Silicon Valley put a lot of money into the Democratic Party over the last couple of elections, but they have also been loud about investigating and possibly breaking up big tech. We saw Elizabeth Warren a couple of years ago. I think it was almost 2 years ago now. We talked about that she wanted to break up Facebook. I think, um, and so there was a lot of possibility that we were going to see kind of the same or even a harder take on them. And it looks like that might be what's about to happen because the Biden administration has appointed Tim Wu, who is somebody who could never have made it through a confirmation hearing, but could be appointed to a non-confirmable position, which is what's happened to the National Economic Council. He is a hardliner anti-big tech. Um, he actually coined the term net neutrality in the early 2000s. So that's a topic we've talked about a lot, going back to the early days of the show. So he was involved in the 2019 campaign to break up Facebook, which was backed by the co-founder, Chris Hughes. So he's actively kind of anti big tech. So this could be an interesting couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, this is one area where you're right. There is kind of bipartisan support, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the reasoning, I don't know, because I think it kind of breaks down. I don't know that the bipartisan support is there because for the reasons is there for the same reason,
Oh
right?
no, everybody has their own
I
reasons
think
for distrusting.
right. So I think, I think some Republicans don't like and feel like some of the social media companies are not, are they don't like the moderation that's been used against. They feel like they've been banned unfairly, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, the problem that Democrats have with them is completely different, which is that they think that they have too much monopoly power. So I don't know whether, I mean, I guess this means that if Democrats want to exercise, antitrust powers against some of these companies, they're not going to have as many defenders. Although I think we should also be clear that uh, these companies are donate to all types of candidates.
Absolutely.
Like most businesses, they are more than happy to play both sides because whoever wins, they win,
Yep.
right? Um, so so they are more than willing to pay and to to donate to whoever is to everybody on the thought that's going to help their case.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think anything's going to come out of this? Not really. um, I think it's really hard to, I mean, the last time there was a major antitrust, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the last time there was a major antitrust breakup of a company was AT&T. in
I think you're right.
1984 or something, right?
I think you're right.
The 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 um, stomach to do that kind of thing, uh, again, seems unlikely, even though we have companies that have an incredible amount of power.
Hmm.
Uh, arguably a lot more than AT&T had back then. I mean,
Yeah.
Google has become, yeah, Google has become, just by the fact, and I know we're going to get to another story about this, right?
Hmm.
I mean, their influence over the search market and advertising, and that, and all these things. I mean, that's makes them an incredibly powerful company. Now, I'm not saying that that there's anything wrong with Google or they're doing anything bad, but they
Right.
are an extremely powerful company.
Hmm.
And then you have, and it's hard for me to imagine. Um, it's hard for me to imagine anything that results in a breakup. What I can see, the European Union has more of an antitrust,
Culture.
enforcement, more of a taste for antitrust enforcement. I could see some types of maybe consent decrees around certain things
Yeah.
where they felt that a particular practice was anti-competitive. Um, in the case of Facebook, um, I mean, there's definitely a lot of issues with the fact that, now that Facebook is in this position, they can buy competitors and basically, you know, put them out of business. But I feel like there's a decent chance at some point that, I don't know, am I being too crazy to say this? I think that at least maybe Facebook, the company, is sitting pretty, but I think Facebook.com, I don't know that Facebook.com is forever. Like, a lot of people use it. I use it. Probably shouldn't use it as much as I do. But here's the bottom line, right? It's not cool like
Hmm.
anymore. The young folks don't go hanging out. I mean, a lot of people have Facebook accounts, but it's not cool.
Yeah.
And unlike Google doesn't need to be cool. Like, Google is useful. Google is very, very, all of the Google tools are very, very useful, right? Um, so Facebook, whose, at least primary site is based on kind of being the place that people hang out. I mean, I think, I don't think it is out of the question for something to rise up and take the place of it.
Yeah. I I think and I think I've probably said this since they made the purchase that they bought Instagram knowing that it was the thing that was already replacing it. Um, and since then, they've had two big challengers come up, right? They've had Snapchat that tried to unseat Instagram, and Instagram copied all of the things that made Snapchat popular and held them off. And they still exist, but they're not like the big talking point like they were for a while. And then TikTok came up, and what did Instagram do? They copied the things that made TikTok special and have been kind of holding the line there a little bit. Though, in fairness, most of the stuff that's uploaded to people's Instagram reels has the TikTok watermark on it. So I don't know how hard they're holding that line, but uh, I think they're always aware that there are things trying to take them out as a whole box. But yeah, I think the Facebook proper property has has seen its peak. I think it's definitely seeing a downward trajectory, and probably the reason why they started putting the Facebook logo on the login page for all of the other properties that they own, and then put all of the other property icons above it on all of the other properties. So if you go to log
Yeah,
into Instagram, you see the Facebook F, you see the Instagram camera, you see the WhatsApp, whatever it is, you see the Oculus O, all on the login screen because They're trying to remind you that they're more than Facebook.com. But you're right. They keep buying things, right? And trying to force integration. And that's the thing that's going to ultimately get the company in trouble, I think, is, the forced integration. Because that's the thing that keeps, like, I think that's the place that both sides come together on, is the idea that Facebook is integrating Instagram and WhatsApp messages, which means that the privacy policy on both of them have changed. And there's a lot of concern around all of that. And there seems to be universal concern across everybody on that. So everybody's creating things that I think can be rallied behind under the right circumstances. But I think you're right. I don't think there's a breakup coming. I think there's harsh penalties, including with this that's not the topic we're talking about later, but the Google antitrust case that was opened by there's two, right? There's one by the FTC and one by the DOJ against Google, both opened under Trump. Those are not going anywhere, and I have a feeling we'll have more investigations like that might be more about bringing awareness to what's happening than solving anything. But bringing awareness to bad policy is how they got Google to change their hiring practices. So it can have positive results too. We'll see. When you bring a bulldog into the chicken coop, things will happen. But whether or not they'll be good things, only time will tell. This week's Pilch Point with Abram Pilch is proudly powered by PureVPN. The best way to protect your privacy online is with PureVPN. You can hide your online activities, say goodbye to regional restrictions, and improve your streaming quality. Plus, it's available for almost all of your devices, and you can get a special price right now by going to pilchpoint.live/PureVPN. So this week was a bit of an anniversary week, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I suppose if you look back at any week, you can find anniversaries of different tech products and tech tech brands and tech things. This week we had two.
There's a show, I don't know if it's still in production, by one of the tech podcast members that was called This Week in Tech History. I think is what it was called. And Today in Tech History, and every day he'd post a new short episode about something that had happened in the past on that day, which was pretty cool. Anyway. So
this week we saw two interesting anniversaries. I'll take the less important one first, which is this was the 10th anniversary of Intel Thunderbolt technology. So Thunderbolt is the connector that you see on a lot of high-end notebooks. Macs use it. The current generation is Thunderbolt 4, which is almost identical to Thunderbolt 3, but you'll see it on a bunch of new notebooks. We had on the Tom's Hardware show last week a couple of the lead people from Thunderbolt, and they interestingly broke a little news saying that the next generation of Thunderbolt will be twice as fast. So right now it does 40 gigabits per second, which allows it to do, I think, 4K 60 hertz to a monitor. If it goes up to 80, then 80 gigabit per second, then it can do faster data transfers. It can do faster video, all that stuff. So, pretty cool. Obviously, not everybody has Thunderbolt, but it's becoming more common on Intel notebooks. The desktops still not so easy to find. Now, The really exciting anniversary, although we didn't break a lot of news, and they didn't break a lot of news this week, is Raspberry Pi. So Raspberry Pi is now 9 years old. The first Raspberry Pi, initial Raspberry Pi, was launched on February 29th, 2012. The interesting story that I like to tell my son is that he and the Raspberry Pi are the same age. His birthday is not the 29th. His birthday is actually in April, but he and Raspberry Pi are the same age, and he's been playing with it a lot, so kind of makes sense. So we put up some information about some of the things that that you should that folks who are not super familiar with Raspberry Pi should know. Well, first of all, as frequent viewers of this show know, I am constantly surrounded by Raspberry Pi boards. This is a 3A that was just sitting on my table over here, only because I caught my 2-year-old wandering around with it. I have a drawer over here full of different Raspberry Pis and different things on them. Here's one that has a Braincraft hat. Here's one in a rainbow case. And over here I have one that my son and I were just playing with a couple hours ago, which has these different these are called breakout garden boards. So you put up these different boards here that you can attach that are sensors and lights. So this one is like an OLED screen, and this one here is an LED matrix, and this one here is a light sensor. And in a drawer, I have like a color LCD screen one, and I have one that's a potentiometer, and you pop them in, and then there's code for them. But the Raspberry Pi, obviously, this $35 computer has become very important in the world. There have now been 38 million Raspberry Pis sold through January.
And only 10% of them are in your office.
That's right. If you count Raspberry Pi Picos, and Raspberry Pi Pico is the newest Raspberry Pi, which is not really the same kind of Raspberry Pi because it's a microcontroller. It's not, a Raspberry Pi is a full-fledged Linux computer. You can boot in it. You can attach a monitor, a keyboard. You can browse the web. You can use it as an arcade machine. You can use it for robots, all kinds of cool stuff. The Pico, which is $4, is a microcontroller, and so it doesn't really run an operating system. You just it's really good for controlling lights and motors and sensors, and you can do video output with it over VGA, strangely, but it's not a typical. It's not like a standalone computer like the regular Raspberry Pi. But if you count all those, I easily have more than 30 Raspberry Pis here in my office. So, and the reason why is once you start putting them into projects, you don't want to take it out when you're working on something else. So, like, here's this keyboard I was showing earlier that does, Stream Deck stuff, and it's got a Raspberry Pi Pico attached. If I yank this in and out all the time, every time I want to use this, I'm going to break the pins. So, you got to leave it in there. So there have been 38 million Raspberry Pis of different kinds sold since 2012. The biggest year ever was this past year, 2020, where the company sold over 7 million, I think it was 7.8 million Raspberry Pis in 2020, because I guess a lot of people were indoors. This was a good time to do projects, and Raspberry Pi 4 had just come out in 2019, which meant that we're kind of at a new level of performance. So there have been some facts. The original Raspberry Pi target was to only make 1,000 Raspberry Pis. So Raspberry Pi was invented by founder Evan Upton and first debuted in 2012. And his original goal was to make a computer to help Cambridge University, not every university in the world, just Cambridge University in England, get more computer science applications. So he thought if we make 1,000, really inexpensive, hackable, easily hackable, cheap computers for kids so they can play with them and they can become a little bit more tech savvy, we will increase the number of applications that we're getting for the computer science program at Cambridge. We'll go up from having a couple hundred to having a few hundred more. So maybe we can make 1,000 of these. And then when people found out uh, about it, that they were going to build a $35 Linux computer, the level of attention to it really took off, and they turned it into a real nonprofit organization that has now sold 38 million units. And about half of those units actually don't go to, haven't been sold to hobbyists. They're going to businesses, industrial clients who are using them for things like clusters, putting them in products, things like that. So it's a very serious computer. There have been 21 models released. The Pico is the most recent, but I should say there have been at least 21 models, depending on whether you want to count the different amounts of RAM that are available in different units, different SKUs as their own model. I wouldn't, but there's 1, 2, 4, and 8 gigabyte Raspberry Pi 4s. So I would count that as one model, but you could count it as 4 if you wish. But counting them all as one, it's 21 different models. The most popular Pi of all time was the Raspberry Pi 3B, which I know I have one lying around here somewhere. And that has sold 13.2 million units. I think the reason for that is it was really, I think, where Raspberry Pi started to really hit its stride when the 3B came out, which was 2016. And then it was included in a lot of kits for people to buy, and 4 hasn't really had time to displace it yet. So 13.2 million units. The most popular Raspberry Pi 4B, which it is available in 2, 4, and 8 gigabytes, is the middle, the 4 gigabyte model. There are more than 20 different operating systems for the Raspberry Pi. So a lot of people buy a Raspberry Pi, and the first thing that they do is if you have a Raspberry Pi, you're going to put the operating system onto a micro SD card, which you'll plug into it, and then you'll boot up off of that, and that's your operating system. And a lot of people will just download the Raspberry Pi OS, which is a form of Linux and really good and really well supported. But there are about 24 alternatives as well, including Chromium OS, which will allow you to use this like a Chromebook or a Chrome box. You can get a version of Android. You can install Windows 10 on the Raspberry Pi, although it's a hack and it works very poorly, so I wouldn't recommend that. But there are also things like LibreElec, which allows you to easily run the Kodi streaming software, media management software. So there's just a lot of cool things that you can do with it, including there are some, I wouldn't count these necessarily as their own operating system, but you can get a disk image that will allow you to do things like just set this up as a security camera and just have it work. No special configuration required. Another fact about Raspberry Pi is that there are 2 Astro Pis in space. They are Raspberry Pi units that are on the International Space Station, and kids and teens can submit their programs. I think it's only open to people in the European Union, but can submit their programs in a competition to possibly be run on the Astra Pis. They have just sent up new micro SD cards to the International Space Station. So they've gone from 32 to 256 gigabytes, but the Astra Pis are actually Pi, Raspberry Pi B plus models. So they're like, you know, the next step up from the original model. They're not the fastest. Um, another fact is you can still buy um, some of the oldest Pis because they do not like to end of life products at the Raspberry Pi Foundation. They want people to be able to continue to buy the old stuff in case they have to use it as a drop-in alternative in some project they were doing. Granted, I wouldn't recommend anybody buy a Raspberry Pi 1, 2, or 3 unless you had something like a case or something that you had to put it in. But I'd recommend getting the latest one, the 4, or getting the tiny 0 for small things. Another thing to note is that the price of the Raspberry Pi has actually dropped over the last 9 years relative to inflation. So the base level main Raspberry Pi right now is the $35 Raspberry Pi 4 with 2 gigabytes of RAM. That is, it has a quad core processor that runs at 1.5 gigahertz that is 40 times faster than the 700 megahertz processor on the original Raspberry Pi. It has 2 gigabytes of RAM when the original had 256 megabytes. It has 802.11 AC Wi-Fi. The original Pi had no Wi-Fi. It has dual HDMI out. It has USB 3 instead of USB 2 ports. And yet it is the same $35. If you were to look at what $35 and $2012 is today, that's $39.88. So you are getting more computer for less money today, more computer for equivalent of less money today. Finally, there is a Pi War every year. There is a convention, a competition called Pi Wars. It's not like a real war, but it is a non-destructive robot competition. By non-destructive, we mean it's not like battle bots. You don't destroy your opponent's robot, but they have competitions where that are both autonomous and not autonomous, where you either have your Pi robot go through an obstacle course or one where you drive it. They have a balloon popping thing where you and an opponent have balloons on each other that you can pop, but you can't destroy each other's robot. And that's called Pi Wars. And that the next one will be taking place in July 2021. Anyway, those are just some quick facts about Raspberry Pi for folks who haven't gotten started with a Raspberry Pi yet. I really encourage you to check out our Raspberry Pi Getting Started guide, our overall Raspberry Pi guide on tomshardware.com. We will help you pick which Raspberry Pi to buy. We will help you get set up so you too can have a lot of fun with your family or doing serious stuff like creating security cameras, IoT devices, learning to program, creating a weather station, building a robot. Raspberry Pi can really do it all, and that's why it is one of the most popular computers in the whole history of technology, and why there are so many people who are part of the Raspberry Pi community.
Yeah, and it's a super active community. It's the maker community is always active, but there's something special inside of the Raspberry Pi community. Yeah. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind, is that like you might say like, okay, you might read and they're like, oh, there's something called the Banana Pi that's coming out. Maybe there's the Beagle board or the NVIDIA Jetson or other things that are coming out that are single board computers that maybe have some technological advantage over the Raspberry Pi. Maybe it gives you more ports, or maybe the processor is faster or whatever. Although right now the Pi 4 is pretty good. pretty good speed. But the thing is, it's the support. The support really matters, because if you want a program to do something, if you want an accessory that does something, you will find it because someone else has probably already done it. Whereas, go out and try and find a lot of support for, say, the NVIDIA Jetson Nano, or go out and find something for the Asus Tinkerboard. I mean, there are people who are into those, sure, but they're not millions and millions of people. There's not a constant flow of innovation going on like this.
Right.
There just isn't. The Reddit community for Raspberry Pi is 2.3 million users. That's just the Reddit community.
Right. Yeah, it's and we've used them a lot at Amrock. There's just so much you can do with it, and they're so inexpensive. it's hard to it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's like all different projects, and lately my son, and who's 8, who's really good with these, simple enough for an 8-year-old, advanced enough for an 80-year-old, advanced enough for an IT manager of any age. So, we've done projects ranging from building a controller that can remote control a Nintendo Switch over the internet, to using it for, like, with cameras, to using it with sensors, to building just a crazy amount of different robots with them, robots that can do image recognition, using it as a smart speaker. The sky is really the limit.
For sure. And the fact that you have gotten, and by you I mean the royal you, the Tom's Hardware community has gotten so behind it, has really helped make it a little more mainstream. Not just the maker community, but you've brought it.
I wouldn't take any credit for anything. All I can say is that I personally really have been into it and enjoyed it a great deal. So when I became editor-in-chief of Tom's Hardware, I decided that it was a topic that knowing it as a topic enthusiasts like, I said, hey, this is a topic that we should really put effort into, and we put effort into it, and people we do get some people coming to us for that, but there's a lot of other great resources on Raspberry Pi too. It is a tremendous community, and we're just a really small part of it, so not even a big part of it. But
it's good to be part of it. The more the more faces, it's more public faces, the more possible.
It's good to be
exposure.
part of it. I do for folks. I think I've mentioned this before, but on Tuesdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, I do a weekly show called the Tom's Hardware Podcast, where we have different people from the Raspberry Pi community come on and talk. So it's fun.
For sure. And like you said, there's lots of resources on Tom's Hardware. And like I said at the top of the show, there's an article that I saw earlier that I cannot wait to read myself about the Stream Deck kind of thing. So as always, I always appreciate the topics that you bring, and I always look forward to what we're talking about next. This week's Extra Life on F5 Live is proudly powered by Razer. Get all the accessories you need to up your game on your PC, console, or mobile device from Razer. Whether you're looking for a gaming mouse and keyboard like we use here in the studio, a webcam and light to make your Twitch stream better, or an entire system, you can find all of it at Razer by going to f5live.tv/Razer. Now, one of the topics that's been pretty constant for us over the last year has been talking about Epic Games, and that's because you never quite know what's coming next with them. Um, the the expansion of the Epic Games Store has finally put pressure on Valve, which has been kind of Steam has been kind of the go-to place for PC gaming for so long, and it's put some pressure and some competition, and we know competition brings new ideas, and that promised redesign from Steam finally happened. Um, uh, they keep buying things, and this week they announced that they had purchased Mediatonic, which is the studio behind the popular Fall Guys game. If you've not played, but you spend any time on social media, you have absolutely tripped across a meme by that of a colorful guy that looks like a marshmallow with diving goggles. That, that's Fall Guys, and so they've Epic has brought them into the fold, and there's been a lot of talk about why. It would seem at first that the reason would be obvious, that it's a direct competitor to Fortnite, which is Epic's big cash cow right now, both on streaming and on playing. But there's more to it than that. One of the things that we haven't talked about a lot when it comes to Epic has been the Epic Games Metaverse. It's something that the CEO, Tim Sweeney, has talked about off and on, publicly and loudly, but not as frequently as you would think based on his excitement about it. The idea is basically a virtual world. PlayStation Home is a pretty basic example of the concept, and that failed because there was no content. But Epic Games wants to have something like that, and if you've been following what we've been talking about over the last 12 months, we've talked a lot about kind of the weird things that Fortnite has done within the game, like screening an entire movie or having a live concert. Those are all things that fit into that metaverse concept. One of the things that Sweeney has said is that for the concept to work and for it to not be PlayStation Home, there has to be content, and it has to be varied, and it has to be interesting. And so, Fall Guys has obviously been able to do that. Their Twitter account is more meme than information. They have created an environment of entertainment around the game, and I think that's got a lot to do with why Epic wanted it. Sweeney himself even said that it was a big part of the interest in the studio, because they know how to create an engaging community, and that's the idea behind the metaverse. I don't know, Avram. I have been so torn on this concept over the years. I know it grew out of a sci-fi story from like the 50s, the word metaverse, and it's gone, a little weird, but we have the technology to do it today. I just don't know if enough people will care. What do you think?
Well, let's see. Are we talking about something really along the lines of Second Life?
Ish. A little more interesting than that, but sure, that's another good.
The idea of what?
Yeah, that's another example of the core concept, where it's
Right.
where it's not an MMO where you go in and there's goals. That
Right.
was the thing about Second Life, right? There was um there was a great joke on The Office. There's no tasks or accomplishments, no winners or losers, and then Jim says, "Oh, there's losers." Uh, and I have a feeling that more people are on the Jim side than on the Dwight side of that conversation.
Right. So, I mean, we've seen the last year, and now it's been almost exactly a year that people have
Nine,
been,
9 days
uh,
short.
yeah, that people have been in a lockdown mode, and it's and it's not. I mean, granted, some folks have taken the lockdown more seriously than others and continue to do so, but I think a lot of people have seen that they're kind of trapped indoors and they're not spending as much time with real people. And on top of this, the internet has shown us over the course of time that a lot of us are working with people and friendly with people who don't live near us. So even if we could just go out the door, we couldn't see the people and socialize with them
Right.
that we want to all the time. So creating a shared environment that was worthwhile would be great. I think the question is how will you accomplish that? I mean, we have a lot of different ways that have been attempted to accomplish that. And it's obviously a lot of things happen with people playing games together already, and that's been going on a long time. Uh, so so there's that. Are
Yeah,
you going to try
there
and
have
do
been
something?
there have been weddings in World of Warcraft. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So there's been stuff like that going on a long time. And of course, there's also one thing that I guess plays in this conversation was it this past week or the week before that Microsoft was talking about new HoloLens stuff and
Yeah,
using
at
HoloLens for
Insight
shared
this week.
environments?
In Insight? No, in doesn't matter. Yeah, their conference this week.
Yeah. So that's
In,
another, I mean,
including work with Niantic on Pokemon Go for the HoloLens, which they have teased before.
yes, we will. I will
I
not
wouldn't
hold my
recommend
breath,
holding your
but
breath. Yeah.
I wouldn't hold my breath for that. But I would love to see how I got to try HoloLens when it was just coming out a few years ago. I still think that that is the best
Mhm.
AR thing that I've demoed, the
I,
best AR or VR thing that I've demoed.
I had one in my possession for so long and I had to give it back and it killed me to give it back. Just
Did you get to
wasn't.
use it for much?
Oh yeah, I I was doing some test software stuff on it. We were
Cool, because
building something in uh, partnership with the military.
but I think for as far as like consumer apps, I don't know if there really are many for HoloLens that people can use right now because it has been such a niche,
Yeah,
expensive niche product.
that's the cost is the thing that's killed it.
But you can, one could see where you really could use this. Like, I
Yeah,
would love to, instead of going to meetings that are video conferences, go to meetings in VR.
yeah.
I would,
The Teams thing that they Ignite. That's it. That they the Microsoft Teams thing for Hololens that they showed off at Ignite is kind of that.
yeah, I mean, I would very much like it to feel a little bit more like having a conference on Star Trek Discovery, where you look around and, well, they don't have headsets, but it's like someone's full body is kind of beamed into your space, and so it would be it would be kind of cool if you could have something where it was more like spending time with the person.
Right. But where are we on that? We've talked. Even Google wasn't able to keep their VR dreams alive, right? Their daydream is dead. The, VR has also had trouble gaining any kind of traction. And it's a bit of a catch-22, right? There's no great content, which makes people less interested in buying the hardware, which makes developers less interested in developing great content. It's same vicious cycle that killed Windows Phone, and many other BlackBerry, and all kinds of other projects before it. Um, I, maybe Epic has has I mean, with all this talent and heaps of cash behind them, maybe they finally have the longevity to be able to produce something that would be the killer app for AR or VR that could finally make the technology something that people would clamor for. Uh, Maybe.
And by the way, that kind of thing, getting back to an earlier conversation we had, somebody who gets that right and makes it really addictive, that could be the thing that really dethrones Facebook.
Yeah, true. Because so Facebook's got their virtual thing, but it's tied to Facebook, which dirties it for people, right? That just naturally by having their name on it, it dirties it a little bit. And Oculus being forced to have a Facebook account now dirties it too. But yeah, if somebody could really get it right, that could be the thing that Facebook couldn't buy and keep going with, because their involvement would dirty it enough that it wouldn't be the success that it had been under somebody like Epic. So it's gonna be interesting. They've been building up to this for a while. I do think that Tonic Games is a good piece of the puzzle, because they are good at creating a community around a thing that's not all that community-able, and they did. You know what I mean? It's a very transient game, and yet they've managed to build a very strong community around it. So, their ideas, their content, along with the Fortnite content and all the things that comes with, they're building a good portfolio. if they wanted to build a virtual world with the strength of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think they're putting that together. So they might be the ones to do it. We'll see. This week's news from the tubes and F5 Live is proudly powered by Riff Tracks. Make fun of movies, let these guys do it for you. Mike Nelson, Bill Corbett, and Kevin Murphy, the former stars of Mystery Science Theater 3000, are back and doing what they do best, creating commentaries for Hollywood blockbusters and B-movie oddities. It's like watching a movie with your funniest friends. And to find out about all of the full-length features, the short films, TV episodes, and live events, you can go to f5live.tv/rifftracks with an X. So we know that privacy has become a hot topic over the last 6 months in particular when it comes to, we talked big tech earlier, and privacy is one of the concerns there. Apple really shook things up when they announced that iOS 14.5 was going to allow users to reject an app's ability to use the tracking ID. And then last year, Google surprised everybody, I think, when they announced that global tracking cookies would be a thing of the past sometime in 2022. They've talked about the replacement in concept. It's called Privacy Sandbox. The idea is, right now, the way Google tracks behavior for advertising is that basically through the tracking cookies, all of your browsing activity is sent to Google's advertising servers, where a profile is then created about you and can then create targeted ads for you. Now, the difference with the Privacy Sandbox is almost all of that work is pulled down to your browser. So the browsing history isn't pushed up. The profile isn't created remotely. It's all done within your browser, and the only thing that goes out is the actual profile, the interest profile, and then advertisers have the ability from there to target interest groups in, according to Google, in similar ways to how they do now, though there will be lots of demographical information that will be lost in this transition. Google says this is the way advertisers want it ever anyway. Advertisers don't necessarily agree, which is interesting, with Google trying to speak on behalf of the advertisers and the advertisers going, I don't think you've quite got it. So this is going to be an interesting transition. They've got sometime in 2022 is when it's all supposed to go into place. So they've got at most a year and a half to figure out with the advertisers what's up. This could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think hasn't it already started to an extent?
So the only thing that's happening currently is that if you open your console, you get warnings about cookies that in the future will not run. That's what's going on right now. So if you hit F12 and open the console and browse the internet, you will see red warnings just going crazy as you
here's
browse
the thing.
web.
Doesn't this advantage Google? Because Google is one of the world's biggest ad traffickers around. So they have your data from your Google account when you're on Google, when you're on Gmail, when you're on even on other sites, I think, that are using Google AdSense. So by getting rid of third-party cookies, are they not in effect helping themselves?
No, because those tracking cookies won't run if they're not issued by the domain that they're running on. So, no, that information actually won't be transmitted back. Just the profiles, theoretically, and that's the thing. So, okay, so a good friend of ours, Brian Hendrigan from Advocado, was quoted this week after Google tried to address this, and he said that it's somewhat of a wolf in sheep's clothing approach by the largest digital advertising vendor on the planet. Their claim to eliminate individual tracking IDs may seem like a win for privacy advocates, but it's actually more of a land grab, which is exactly what you're saying. So yes, there's a lot of concern that that's what it is. Now, obviously, we don't know how they're going to behave, right? They're saying this is the way we're going to behave, and a lot of people in the industry are going, yeah, we don't trust that. There's no way that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, Google is already at a huge advantage in the ad space in terms of ad serving, ad tracking, all that stuff. And even if let's say things that are served on sites that don't belong to Google but served via Google AdSense don't have access to this demographic information, still people spend so much of their time on Google services like Google Search and Gmail and YouTube that even if they hurt their offsite business, they're probably even further advantaging themselves in their first party, Google ads on Google service. So, it's not. I'm concerned about publishers.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, look, nobody likes the thought of all these advertising cookies that are going around that people can then use to serve you up things that look a little creepy to you, like, oh, I browsed this website and considered buying this thing, and now I just can't stop getting ads for it wherever I go.
Or, God forbid, I mention something weird in the vicinity of my phone and then start getting ads for it. Those are the ones
People are
that
always
bother
saying
me.
that. People are always saying that, and I have to ask: has there ever been any evidence that that's the case? Because that would really be a problem.
I so I had never searched for LED walls because why would I? They're to get one of any valuable size, it's $100,000. I don't have the budget for that. But Michelle and I were joking about it one day because we were at this facility and I made the joke, this is $1 million worth of screens and there's no way they're ever going to generate enough revenue to pay for it. I would like to buy them at a liquidation. And the next day, Facebook was showing me local companies that rent and sell LED screens, LED walls. Now, could it have been because I was at a place that rents access to a room with a curved LED wall and Google Maps tracked it? Yeah, there's hundreds of reasons why that could be the case, right? But it is funny when things like that happen and you're like, well, wouldn't you love to know what connection was made there?
I mean, believe me, I've had similar stories. My wife is always saying things about it. That to me, like, I think we should distinguish between things that are a real problem and things that are, right? Like, if that were happening, which there's no definitive evidence that it is, and if it was, there probably would be illegal for your phone to just be recording you and sending data like that back to whomever, Google, Facebook, I don't know.
Yeah.
That would be really serious because then you have a device in your pocket spying on you.
Right.
What we're talking about online is advertisers dropping a cookie, which theoretically I don't think knows your name or anything like that. It just knows that you have, shown an interest in this product or something like that.
Or you've read an article on a topic and maybe you start seeing things related to that. I get that all the time. Post CES, I start seeing ads for our guests like crazy.
So now here's the question though, why? I mean, now granted, some of that stuff is super creepy and I don't like it. But is it really hurting anyone?
No.
What it's doing is it's allowing these publishers and advertisers to make some money. And frankly, some of the ads that I get hit with as a result of this stuff are probably better than the ads I would get hit with without it.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm getting hit with like 1 million ads for things that I looked up on Amazon or whatever. Like, fine, better to whack me over the head with that than to show me more ads about how boiling bananas is going to help me cleanse my colon or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the ads when targeting fails are weird, aren't they?
I mean, to be fair, I get those anyway, because like a lot of websites have stuff where if you scroll to the very bottom of the page, you get, I'm trying to remember the name of it. There's like 2 or 3 services that do these sort of related content ads, and they're just really over the top. And
yes, they are.
You get those even with tracking cookies because they're not tracking anything, right? Yeah. So you get they're always the worst.
Highest dollar is what shows up there. It's got nothing to do with your history. They couldn't care.
But it's always like there are always like 3 kinds of ads there. There's like, this one thing will clear your bowels, as if like that was something everybody really wants to do. And then it's like
is this the new normal? Showing guys with weight here. I see that one in that bar a lot.
Oh, and then I always see ones that's like, it's some picture of someone from the past is like, remember her? What she looks like now is jaw dropping, or
And
it'll
then
be something like,
and then that person is never in that slideshow.
yes, that's right. Yeah, it's always like, or it'll be like celebrities who died, and then you'll see someone and they're like in the picture, like, oh man, I didn't know that person was dead. And you'll click through, and they're not even in the
They're
slideshow.
not in there.
Who died, or
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah,
24 celebrities you didn't know were gay, and then you look at the picture, you're like, wait, what? And they're not in the slideshow.
Yeah, they're trying to get you. It's. I mean, I guess it's like the equivalent of the supermarket checkout line of ads,
Yeah.
right? It's just terrible. So, frankly, if someone wants to keep surfing me ads for like Raspberry Pi add-on boards that I checked out,
fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
And Brian goes on to say the real losers are competitors to the Google ad products, advertisers, and even consumers. Consumers will receive less targeted ads, and advertisers will have more ad waste. So
yeah, and publishers will not be able to charge as much money for the ads. Although one could make a case, and granted, I don't think that advertisers are always very rational to these sorts of cases. They're not always very convinced, but one could make a case that having less tracking means that quality content is worth more, right?
Could be.
Because we can't target this you can't target this ad to anybody anywhere. So if you go to my article that's written about this topic, well, that's how you're going to know you're getting the right person.
True. That would be your way. Like the old days, that would be your way of properly targeting your audience, is by finding content that aligns with the audience you're looking for.
Online advertising, it's just weird. I'll never understand I'll never understand the thought process, but like I should, but I'll never really understand the thought process behind people who are buying advertisements on the internet versus buying them on television versus buying them in print, because online there's so much tracking that everything is considered kind of a fail unless somebody clicks through and buys something. Well, not always, but very often it's like, oh, you ran on this and you didn't get a lot of clicks. Oh, that ad wasn't a success.
Right.
But if I run an ad on television and I don't know who clicked on my ad, but I still think it's okay.
Interestingly,
right?
That correlation is what Brian's company does.
Oh, he tries to figure out what the effectiveness of a television ad.
They listen to television and are able to start running Google ads when your ad runs in conjunction, so that you can track people who are searching for the thing that you're talking about in your ad or content.
That's interesting,
isn't it?
That's
cool?
Interesting, but that at least that would, if you want to consider that a success. We don't know if they bought your product, but you think about it, the way that advertisers judge online success is really quite unfair, has always been quite unfair, because there's so much data. It's like, oh, think about this. If you saw a commercial for Burger King at 11:30 p.m. and you don't turn off the television, get in the car, run out to Burger King right now and buy a Whopper, that means that ad was a fail. Like that, I mean, that's the only medium that's judged like that. Nobody says, oh, we had an ad in the newspaper and somebody didn't put down the newspaper immediately and go buy something.
Right.
Like I mean, you have ads for cars running at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, if I don't turn off the television and run to the car dealership, which isn't open at 11 o'clock at night, like, does that mean that ad is a fail? I mean, there's rarely any credit given for like building mind share with online advertising, Whereas every other type of advertising is exactly that.
And
So
that's one of the things that even in our space, right? In the podcasting space or the live streaming space, it's not we're not necessarily judged on immediate click through, right? We're
mm,
we talk a lot about, building relationships, right? I Not everybody went out and bought one of these microphones when Neat came on as a partner, and we've talked about Neat a lot. We're both using them now, and and
yeah,
you know everybody didn't jump on and necessarily go out and buy one, but we know that people became aware of them in the same way that TV accomplishes that or print media accomplishes that. It really is just kind of like web display ads that are judged so harshly. So,
yeah,
yeah,
it's so I don't know. Maybe with less tracking, they will be considered more for branding. I don't know,
maybe.
but uh, I fear that what's going to happen is that it's just going to lead to lower CPMs and
Hmm.
therefore less revenue to pay people to create quality content.
Yeah, that's my fear. It's Brian's fear as well. But there's possibly ways of playing in that arena. That's what our space is all about. We can actually, even with a lower audience number, we have high engagement with our audience. We actually are able to charge more, because our audience is engaged with you and I, as we were talking about before the show. Right? We have a whole conversation going from a month ago on the Alienware laptop that you showed off in the Pilch Point. We've got people who are helping each other with questions about specs and stuff like that. Our audience is engaged, so maybe we'll see that come back to the web. There's no telling, um, and we've got time. Maybe Google's going to get pressured into talking more about this, um, and they're going to have to sit down with the ad agencies and discuss this at some point and figure out what the future looks like. And we will definitely keep people posted on that. This week's DRM Not Included in F5 Live is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. You get free shipping, but did you know you also get free music with Amazon Prime Music? You get free TV, movies, and documentaries with Amazon Prime Video, and you get free games and a free Twitch subscription every month to help support the content creator of your choice with Amazon Prime Gaming, and of course a whole lot more. To learn more, to get quick links to all these features, and if you're not a subscriber, we've got a 30-day free trial, and we have the ability to give it as a gift. There's all kinds of resources for you, whether you are or are not a subscriber, all by going to f5live.tv/prime. And things like that might become more prevalent too, while we're transitioning from topic to topic, right? With Twitch subscriptions, YouTube is has introduced it. There's the Star Chat, I think they call it. Facebook has the ability to do that. Patreon. There's other ways to support content creators. We may see stuff like that start to grow as well. But with Amazon Prime, you can basically give a couple of bucks to a content creator. It doesn't cost you anything. Anyway, so we've talked a lot about kind of the build up of video, especially over the last year. We mentioned 9 days short of a year on the lockdowns. We've seen a lot of growth in video content, and a lot of it has been in the streaming space. Players that had gotten out of streaming have started to get back in. Redbox, for example, right? players that were already in the space have pivoted their approach. You've got, NBC. Uh, yes, we do read our chat. We will we will deal with questions at the end of the show in a few minutes. NBC kind of pivoted from NBC.com to Peacock. While some stuff is still on NBC.com, they are definitely pushing towards Peacock. HBO kind of consolidated everything under the HBO Max brand, including stuff outside DC, for example. Another company that's doing that apparently is Sony, because digital media sales have been down year over year over year. And there's a couple reasons. One, we talked about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, when Amazon lost a lawsuit because they removed content from people's accounts that had purchased the content. And they said, yeah, you weren't actually purchasing the content, you were purchasing the rights to use it for as long as we have the rights. And people didn't quite realize that. So that caused a lot of people to not want to purchase content because it could vanish at any point. And we've seen, information holing across all of the internet, whether it be purchasing a book and it disappears, or videos and it disappears. So people are going back to physical copies of things. Makes sense. If you're building a collection, most people want to have a thing to collect. And on the other side, streaming services. I know there's a bunch of them, but if you just want to rent something, renting a movie generally is about the same cost as a Netflix subscription anyway. So a lot of people have gone that way. So Sony has decided that the PlayStation Store will no longer sell or rent movies and TV later this year. At the same time, having their anime brand Funimation purchase the anime streaming service Crunchyroll. So that suggests to me that Sony has made kind of the same decision as the rest of the media world and followed the trend. And I think I can understand it.
So do we know for a fact that people are buying media less? I mean, yes, there's been some buying. I shouldn't say buying media, buying streaming, not buying cloud-based movies less than they were, because it might just be the case that what Sony is seeing is that people don't want to keep their collection in an off-brand, and when it comes to PlayStation, that's not a place where people think of to buy their movies.
True.
I mean, how is iTunes doing? Like, that's a place where people consistently buy.
Apple has seen a decrease in digital media sales, but not a huge one, because with buying movies and TV on, we'll say iTunes doesn't exist anymore, but Apple Video or Apple TV or whatever brand it falls under now, gives you the ability to download and keep, which is, I believe at this point, unique to that platform. I don't think there's anybody else that offers that anymore. I think it all has DRM expirations now. So, but they have seen a decrease in sales as well. Their numbers have been down, which might explain why Apple TV Plus has become a big focus for them. Maybe.
Yeah. I think there's some interesting questions here. It depends on how people are utilizing their media, right? I will admit I no longer have an optical disc player that I regularly use. So I have a bunch of Blu-rays and DVDs that I never, ever use. Mm-hmm. I could plug in the Xbox or whatever to play one if I really wanted to, but I feel like a lot of people are probably feeling like I don't want physical media, but on the other hand, the issue of buying stuff on Amazon or buying stuff on PlayStation, or well, buying stuff on a variety of platforms is, well, we don't know how long this is going to last. Plus, it is not easy to switch back and forth between the different services.
Right.
So you really want to consolidate, and I don't think many people would want to consolidate their video collection into PlayStation. And the fact that they canceled is a good reason not to, because what's going to happen to people who bought video on PlayStation?
Right. A fair question. I believe, in fairness, I believe that the PlayStation store was a member of Movies Anywhere, which would mean that any of the other Movies Anywhere partners, the content will still be there. So, so you'd still have a dozen or so other platforms where the movies and or TV would still exist. But I believe that if everybody in the Movies Anywhere ecosystem were to kick out, that I think all of those purchases essentially get information hold. I think they all go into oblivion. So
now,
not great.
Maybe also I think the way that streaming has evolved over the last couple of years also points to having libraries of content that are consistent, so therefore people don't need to buy. For example, CBS, now Paramount Plus, has a consistent library of all the Star Trek shows.
Right.
So where somebody might have in past bought DVD or Blu-ray or VHS in the day, box sets of...
I won't admit to having the entire original series on VHS.
Right. They now know, okay, as long as I'm subscribed to this service, they're going to continue to have those shows, which is a little bit different than say Netflix, where, well, Netflix owned shows will, if you want to watch Stranger Things 5 years from now, we can pretty well guarantee that it will be there.
Right.
But there's constantly things coming and going,
and God forbid we'll continue to use the Star Trek example, right? There was a period of time where the first 4 were on Netflix, and then the next 3 were on Amazon Prime, and then there were several more on Hulu, but nobody had the whole set. If you wanted to watch them, God forbid you wanted to watch them in order, you had to bounce around from service to service, which is obnoxious. And that's what you're talking about. We're seeing collections of things kind of go back to their owners and live in those places. So it's becoming a little more predictable with stuff like that.
So like Disney Plus, the same thing.
Right.
I mean, the whole Disney library.
Right. Peacock, NBC Universal stuff, the majority of it, almost everything that is streamable, because those rights exist in some way, shape, or form, and are there.
Yeah. So as long as you're willing to subscribe to all these things, I mean, in a way, if you were a person who ever bought Blu-rays or DVDs, you might just be better off just subscribing to all of these things, because I mean, it's like having a huge collection of Blu-rays as long as you keep paying for them.
And there's there's a lot of people who have gone that way. I haven't purchased media digitally or physically in ages, and the only content that I have in my Movies Anywhere ecosystem account is because they've been given to me in one way or another, most of them from the Movies Anywhere partners.
Yeah.
So I watch stuff on streaming one way or another. So it definitely seems to be the way things have gone. So it makes sense for Sony to kind of follow suit. Well, that is our show. Before we go, we've got we've got a question in the chat room. I'm assuming that the video about the old monster-illuminescence that you watched is one of the how-to videos on how to pair the remote to the lights. Has anything changed since then? Yes. There's a video about how there is a massive defect in that product line. What you want to do is you want to swap it for the Monster Smart Illuminescence line. We've got videos on those as well. You can go to Walmart and make that swap. In fact, the replacement, the smart ones, are what's running behind me right now, and the ones that you watched me interact with in the videos have all been retired. So they have been replaced all through our office and studio. So that's what you want to do. With that, I think that does it for us. So on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Abram.
And we will see you back next time. Ciao.